Hi, and welcome to our first flipped unit on the scientific method. A flipped unit is a little bit different than a unit we would normally do in class. For a flipped unit, you're going to be doing your lectures and your notes at home, so that saves more time in class for our hands-on projects and our lab experiments. So it's really important that you come home each night and you fill in your notes according to schedule. Okay, so let's get started. Scientific method. That's what our first lesson is going to be about. And you should have a handout that I passed out today in class for your homework where you're going to fill in the blanks. My tip, the words in bold are the words that go in the blank. And then at the bottom of your handout, you're going to see a flow chart. And in the flow chart, we're going to put step 1, step 2, and so on as we go through. So tomorrow when we get back together in class, we'll make sure we have it filled out correctly. Tonight, I just want you to try and give it your best. Okay, now here we go. What is the scientific method? It's a process that's used to find answers to questions about the world around us. So scientists could use this, but also a regular middle schooler such as yourself could also use it. So here are two pictures that I thought represented some problems we might encounter in our everyday lives. This is called the red ring of death, and this is what happens to your Xbox when it finally quits and kicks the bucket. So this is something we all probably or our friends have experienced. Sometimes we don't have the expertise to fix this, so this is a question we encounter. And here's one that we may encounter outside or in our kitchen or somewhere where we keep our plants. Why did the plant die? Why did my plant die? So those are two very simple questions that we can use the scientific method to answer. Okay. Is there only one scientific method? Nope, there are several different versions of the scientific method. Some versions have more steps, while others only have a few. So next year, when you get in 8th grade, your teacher might tell you there's only 5 steps to the scientific method, where this year we had 7 steps to the scientific method. Doesn't mean either teacher is wrong or right. It just means that some of us break the steps down into more details, while others chunk it together into bigger steps. Either way is fine. However, they all began with identification of a problem or a question and provide an organized method for conducting and analyzing the experiment. So every scientific method, no matter how many steps you have, starts with identifying a problem or a question. All right, so the next thing you do is you're going to make a hypothesis. So what is a hypothesis? It's an educated prediction based on observations and your knowledge of the topic. So actually not tomorrow, but in 2 days, your lesson 3 will be on making testable hypotheses. So you'll get more practice with this. And you should always remember that a hypothesis is a statement and it should not be a question. This is a big mistake that lots of 7th graders make at first. So just keep your eye out for making this mistake. So what is data? This is the next important thing you need to know in order to do the scientific method. It's an information gathered during an experiment, and then you may graph it in a graph like this, or you may record it in a table. There are lots of different kinds of data we can collect, and we'll have a lesson all about data also. So now we're to the part where you fill in the flow chart. So the top box should be step 1, identify the problem. Okay? So that's the only thing you need to write in that box. So what do you want to know or explain? This is what you do when you identify the problem. And you use observations that you've made by looking around, like, oh, my plant died, or oh, my Xbox isn't working, and you turn it into a question. So that's what I did down here for you. So Xbox stopped working. Your question, why did my Xbox stop working? Or your plant died, why did my plant die? Okay. Step 2, you're going to form a hypothesis. What do you think will happen? So write step 2 in the second box in your flowchart and predict the answer to your question or outcome of the experiment. Okay? So for an example, my Xbox is not working because it came unplugged from the wall. Or if the plant is watered the recommended amount every day, it will live longer than if it's not watered every day. So tomorrow on lesson 3, we're going to talk about the if-then hypotheses. So step 3, you're going to create an experiment. So what is an experiment? It's a set of actions or observations performed to verify, that means prove, or falsify, prove wrong, a hypothesis. So how will you test it? And you have to make sure your procedure or your list of steps is reliable and they address safety rules. So later this week, we're also going to have a lesson all about what it means to be a reliable scientist. Step 4. So now you should be in the 4th box along your flow chart at the bottom of your paper. In this step, you just follow the steps in your procedure and perform your experiment, and don't forget to collect your data and your observations. Lots of times I see my students go back to their lab stations and they leave their lab papers on their desk. Now that doesn't make any sense, since you should be recording your data and your observations while you're performing your experiment. Okay. Step 5 is analyze the data. So after you've written down your data, you're going to take a good, long, hard look at it. Is your data reliable? There's that word again. So we're going to talk about that later this week, what reliable means. And does your data and observations from your experiment support your hypothesis? So you're going to look for patterns. For example, did the plant live longer? Did your data say when you plugged in your Xbox it worked? So you might look for patterns like, let's look at this graph right here as an example. You might say whatever this line represents, you can see an increasing pattern. Whatever this line represents, it increase and then decrease and increase again. So, and then we got a decrease and so that's what you're going to be looking for, is a pattern in your data. And then that pattern will help you decide, was your hypothesis supported or was it rejected? Step 6. Now this step gets stuck in there. It's kind of off to the side in a little box in your flow chart. You have to rewrite your procedure to address the flaws in your original experiment. So if you find out that your data did not support your hypothesis, or that something went awry in your experiment, you might have to rewrite your procedure in order to make it a better experiment, which is just fine. Okay? And then step 7. If you did have to go back and rewrite it, you got to redo your experiment, collect data, go through all the steps again. But if not, you can move on to step 7 and communicate your results. In 7th grade science, we communicate our results in a lab report. Sometimes we'll do fun lab reports online on a wiki with a group, and sometimes we'll do our own individual formal lab report. So you're going to write a conclusion that summarizes the important parts of your experiment and the results. So these are some of the most important questions that have to be in your conclusion for your lab report. Was your hypothesis supported? Use the data to explain why or why not. So did the patterns that you found in your data support your hypothesis, or didn't it? If it didn't, that's just fine. It's important to be honest. Your lab reports are never graded on whether your hypothesis was correct or incorrect, or supported or rejected. They're more graded on, did you know if your hypothesis was supported or rejected? And could you tell me how you knew? What errors may have occurred. So these are human errors, not things like my hypothesis was wrong. That's not really an error in science. The errors we're talking about here are things like, I didn't measure quite accurately, or we forgot to start the timer one time, things like that. And how can your experiment be improved? So these could be things like, we could do more trials, we could test more substances, and so on. Okay, so that should fill out your flow chart. And you need to go through, look this over again tonight, rewatch this video if you need to, because you have an entrance slip tomorrow, which will be about 4 questions to see if we got the basic idea down. And then we're going to move on to practice using the scientific method. So I'll see you tomorrow.